everybody, and welcome to an update of where we're at in Air Tycoon 5. So we're back up to 1977, it's almost 1978, and if we take a look at my profit, having started in 1970, I would say this profit is extremely good. Um, Taking a look at our yearly, year on year, we've been seeing good growth, some years more than others, of course. And while the growth is slowing down, as you can see, 900,000, 800,000, 600,000, so we're not growing as fast year on year as we were before. This is one of the big reasons for this is we are having a massive expansion in the number of bases we have. Taking a look at the cities we're investing in, as you can see in the previous episode, I only had London and Paris. Now we've added New York, Frankfurt, Los Angeles, Chicago, and we have plenty and plenty of cities in the very like soon to be pipeline kind of. Now, once again, the main goal for this high investment is to be able to secure a good number of slots in important airports in the world. In key airports in Europe, I want at least 1,500 slots. Now, the reason you want more slots in key European airports, and as we can see, it's already impossible for cities like Amsterdam, where we've kind of underinvested, which is okay. I mean, we can aim for something like 800 to 1,000 slots in these airports as well. That's all we can really do at this point, right? Is because the way the stopovers work is you use twice as many slots in a large European city than you do in North American. Because, for example, in North American city, you might go to Chicago, you might make a stop in a city in Europe, and then stop to Asia. Now, notice that the slot usage is twice as high in the city in the middle because you have to take off and land twice in that middle stopover city per one time for each Asian and North American city. And this kind of means you need a lot more slots in Europe in general in the major cities here, like London is completely slot capped with over 3,000. I own over 3,000 slots, and I still need more. But of course, I'm not really focusing on that, considering the coverage out of London is quite good at this point. Anyhow, with that in mind, the number of slots we were aiming for in North America, I think is about, I mean, we'll have like 1,000 plus in New York because New York is a really big city. But there's kind of like two tiers of cities, I think, in North America. There's New York, Chicago, and LA, and then everybody else. By everybody else, I mean like the Dallases, the Houstons, the Atlantas, and all these cities, San Francisco, even Boston, they all have a business and tour combined of 600 to 700 when your World Traveler Index is about what I have now. And because of that, you probably don't want nearly as many slots in these cities. So I'm going to aim for 750 slots in the cities with about 750 business and tour. And in the cities with more, I'm going to aim for at least 1,000 slots in the likes of Chicago and Los Angeles. At this point in time, it is so unbelievably time consuming to open all the Tupolev routes you need to hold 1,000 slots. I'm going to do the much less profit efficient thing of doing, which is just, for example, for Chicago, I would go to Detroit, open a new route here, and I would just put 5 Tupolevs, to the nearest city because it, has the most schedules, something like this, and then go ahead and use this to kind of max out as many slots as I want. This is significantly less efficient than opening good, profitable routes with your Tupolevs. But at this point in time, it's so much more time effective that I think that's the only strategy I can be bothered to apply at this point. Over in Asia, some of the key cities are starting to fill up quite quickly, so I'm investing heavily to try and catch probably the last 700 or 800 slots I can grab in those cities. Hopefully the AIs don't expand too fast. And that's kind of the plan I have for slots going in forward. Now, more importantly, and I should have probably mentioned this first, is what am I doing to actually make a profit? So let's take a look at our planes, which was open in the beginning. But if we take a look here, I have 250 or so 707s. These are kind of the bread and butter of my owned aircraft. These are actually all profitable, and they're there to make money, as well as the 747-100s. These are kind of the profit-driving planes of my company. And then the Tupolevs are here to occupy slots, and they do actually make profit as well, just not as much. And additionally, just boost my passenger numbers and allow me to lease more 747-100s. I actually can lease many, many, many more 747-100s than I have, but at some point you kind of run out of routes which would be comfortably profitable on downticks, which is something really important. Like there's being profitable on upticks. Almost all planes on all routes are. As you can see, you need to fix the first price cost, which is kind of whoops. That's easy. All we have to do is, because only our 747s are the only planes we have with first class, this is all we have to do. Because we already know what we want all our first class to be 130% pricing, literally all of them, because there's also no competition because none of the AIs run first class having planes except for some companies are running L1011 TriStars, but they're so rare I wouldn't worry about them. So yeah, with that in mind, let's take a look at how much these planes are making. So my stopover 707s, as you can see, all my planes are stopover, making about 4K. Now, making about 4K with an ROI of around, with an upfront cost about 79K, means you get an ROI of about 40 turns, which is pretty good ROI. Now, if we take a look at our 747-100s, let's sort this by plane and scroll up until we find 747-100s, we can see that a typical one is making about 7K. Now, there are a lot of them, which you'll see here, which are making way more. Like this one here is making close to 9K in Tokyo, New York to Manchester, or no, sorry, this one's making about 7K. New York to Manchester, Manchester to Tokyo. No, that's 8K. My bad. I did math in every incorrect way possible. I'm sure some of you guys can relate. This plane here, as you can see, is making over 9K. New York to Zurich, Zurich to Tokyo. It's making almost 9.5K actually. But a lot of these planes will not be completely full on downticks, as you can see. So we got to compensate for that and just assume that the average one makes about 7K, which gives an ROI time of, on average, something like 7 to 8 turns, which is the fastest we can get. However, once again, I'm not maxing out the number of these because when the route just gets a little bit too small, they start to hemorrhage money like nothing else on downticks. And that enormous variance is never something you want to put too much of in your company. So that's why we have a lot of 747s, but we don't focus on them for every single route. Some of these 707 routes, I'm definitely looking to upgrade into 747 routes. Some of them are definitely good enough. Like for this, Columbus to London, London to Vladivostok. This route would certainly make a good 747 route, and while it would lose out a load factor on downticks, it would still be making way, way, way more money with a way faster ROI than the 707s. Now, how do I decide how big of a plane to use for each route? Well, the main thing is just business and tour, right? So, for example, London has a business and tour combined of about 1,050 to 1,100 right now. So for a city like this, anything with a business tour of at least 300, I could fly a 747 stopover, and I wouldn't have to be too concerned about it ever losing too much occupancy. As you can see, the downticks for this route are very mild at worst. Um, Now, if we take a look at a little bit worse of a route, like Little Rock, this is no longer good enough for a 747. As we can see, even the 707 is barely full all the time. And that's just because of the really low satisfaction of the plane. If you had to use a higher satisfaction plane, you could probably fill up something as good as a DC-10 with a plane this size. As we can see, Kansas City is an example of a city which is not quite 300 business and tour. It's about 270. And as we can see, the drops in our profit in 747s is actually considerable during the downticks. So yeah, now London is a really big city. So the sum of the business and tour from London to St. Louis is still well over 1,300. However, let's take a look at a different kind of route. Frankfurt has a combined business and tour of 800, but I'm still flying 747s to cities like Louisville. And if we take a look at the load factors, let me try and find a slightly older route actually. So hopefully there is a longer, older graph. Here we go. We can see that during the upticks, and this is a period of downticks right here. Just obviously this is the ramp up time, um, and then these are downticks. The downticks aren't great, and the upticks are still great. So this is similar to a route like London to uh, Kansas City, which had a combined business and tour of about 1,300. However, the combined business tour of Sendai to Frankfurt is only 1,200, which is considerably lower, but the result is about the same. And that's an interesting thing I've noticed where the size of the smaller city matters more than the size of the bigger city in the sense that cities of similar size connected, obviously with both of them still being large, is kind of like better. So, for example, a city of 600 business and tour connected to another city of 600 business and tour, um, for a total of 1,200 is much, much better than a route between a city of 900 and 300. So I would say for every kind of 100 difference, more, or maybe for every time one city is more than twice as big as the other one, you kind of want a little bit more business and tour to make that work. Um, and of course, all I'm saying is just words. It's probably quite confusing to a lot of people. But just keep in mind that you just take a look at how your routes are performing and the business and tour of the cities that you're connecting. As long as they're monopolies, that's basically a dead giveaway of which ones are doing bad. If the load factor is not full for some reason, then the business and tour just isn't quite high enough. As you can see, this double 747 route is kind of struggling for occupancy in the downticks. Anyhow, with that in mind, there's one more thing that is kind of interesting that I'm doing that also I think I probably should have mentioned earlier, which is really, really important. Now, sometimes the game just gives you a world with terrible business and tour. Taking a look at this graph, around here, my business and tour was looking fine, about 3,100, which for 1974 is not good, but it's not bad. And then it just plummeted down to 2,800s, almost hitting 2,700, which is like an economic crisis for most worlds. Which was just like what is going on? And then we see this very steep incline. What's going on here? Well, this very steep increase is not a coincidence. At some point, I went, well, I don't want to play in a world with 2,800 business and tour, so let me manipulate this. So how do you manipulate the business and tour of your single player Air Tycoon world? So all you really have to do is you have to make a save. I'll just make an extra save here to showcase what I'm doing, and you pass the turn. I'm obviously not gonna use this save because I haven't done anything on this turn and I want to do something. And as you can see, our profit will be plummeting because we didn't fix all these airports, which are overcrowded, including some of my better hubs, like, where's this? Frankfurt. And I'm assuming there's probably another overcrowded hub, which is no longer overcrowded because of the downtick. But yeah, basically, we can go ahead, look at what happens to the World Traveler Index. And if it goes up, just keep the turn. And if it goes down, and obviously it didn't go down here, but I want to reload the save anyway, you can just go ahead and load back into your old save. And then you can do the turn again. So always save at the end of your turn. And then you can reload it until you get your World Traveler Index. And you can force it to whatever you think is fair. So I'm looking at my older YouTube series where my World Traveler Index was roughly 3,500 at this point. So that's what I'm going to aim for here. Because I want to keep up with that company at least. And I'm doing slightly better than I was in that world, so that's great. But anyways, that's all I wanted to say for this episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.